Occasionally, Wizards of the Coast prints an MTG card that says the words, "You win the game" on it. Today we are going to take all of those "You win the game" cards and tier rank them for EDH.
Using a popular meme, the tier list, we're going to rank every single win the game card. We've got a lot of cards to talk about today. Some of them are actually pretty good. The video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We are going to tier rank all of the You Win the Game cards for EDH. But first, if you like the video by the end of it and you want to see more like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let us know what you want us to tier rank.
That's the best way to help out the channel. You can do it for free with just the click of a button. We're going to rank a bunch of cards today, but if you have a tier list that you would like to see, make sure to leave it in the comments, and if it's cool, if it's a meme, if it's funny, maybe we'll make a tier list out of it. This was someone's suggestion.
That's what I was going to say.
From the previous video.
That's what I was going to say. You Win the Game cards is a viewer-submitted suggestion. Let's jump over to it. So let's kick things off with Mechanized production. Blue 2 for an enchantment aura that enchants artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. So this one checks if you win the game at the beginning of your upkeep, so it does have to go all the way around after you cast this, unless you flash it in. And you have to have 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another. They don't have to be the artifact necessarily that you targeted with Mechanized production.
Just to be clear, we are talking about EDH on this tier list. First things that come to mind, we did talk about treasure, we talked about thopters. We talked about all of these different, we've talked about clues as well.
Yeah, clues, treasures, and thopters I think maybe are the easiest way to pull this off. This doesn't seem to be super difficult to pull off, especially if you're just focused on treasures or thopters or something. I mean, blue works well with the Saheeli card that creates a thopter every time you
cast a non-creature.
Yeah, and then you've also got some of the Tezzeret cards that automatically make thopters, and I believe those are called the same thing. I could be wrong on that one. Don't quote me. But thopters would be an easy way to go.
Saheeli makes servos. But so it's servos and then there's thopters. So Mechanized production, I don't think it's super difficult to pull off. The question is, whatever you get enchanted is going to become a lightning rod.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that whatever you're enchanting isn't so squishy as it's just going to get hit by whatever and die. We're going to talk about some other cards in this tier list that actually I would play alongside Mechanized production. We haven't talked about them yet, but I would start this off at a C.
So, yeah, I would say C as well. This is interesting to me. Enchant artifact you control. It doesn't say non-land artifact, so we could go with that indestructible artifact land. You could go with something like Darksteel Reactor or Darksteel Plate for that matter, so that they've got to exile an artifact. I'm not saying that that's necessarily difficult to do, but it makes it a little bit easier than just destroy, Yeah,
and then there's also the squishiness of Mechanized production itself being an enchantment.
Exactly.
So any kind of enchantment removal, and wow, great job, you have 6 Darksteel plates. You almost got there,
Right, yeah, exactly. Miles' Aria is next. It's Naya for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control if you control a creature with 5 or greater power. Then you gain 10 life if you control a creature with power 10 or greater. Then you win the game, if you control a creature with power 20 or greater.
And yes, if you control a 20/20, it will check all of them in sequence, and then you will just simply win the game. So the casting cost on this is pretty low. I do like that it passively puts a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. If you control a creature with power 5 or greater, that's really neat by itself. But, a little bit difficult to pull off.
Yeah, creatures, I mean, there's a lot of ways to remove creatures, even indestructible creatures, especially in EDH. You're going to want to figure out there's that behemoth that makes power 5 or greater creatures indestructible for 1 mana. There are creatures that might be indestructible and hexproof that you could put this on. but you've got to build that power up to 20 or greater. And honestly, I'm of the opinion that if you've got a creature with power 20 or greater, it's probably not just a vanilla 2020 you've got sitting there. And so you maybe should be making some strides towards winning the game anyway. But this could be a fun way to passively get there.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this as well, I like the idea of, in response to the upkeep trigger, buffing a creature to just get to that, you play something like Become Immense or anything that's going to give it like a nice big power and toughness buff until the end of turn, and then it gets the additional counter. So I think there's ways that you could cheat it, like after the untap step. However, I do think it's restrictive to Naya, which is fine.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not super high on it. I would rank it at about a D.
Yeah, I think it's not quite as good as Mechanized Production if we're going to be attempting to win the game with one card that says win the game. Creature players are going to hate that call for that card, but honestly, I'm comfortable there, and if Mechanized Production is kind of our middle line, we'll go from there. How about Hellkite Tyrant, Jake?
Well, 2 red, 4 other flying trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. 6/5. It's really funny. I have always just seen flying and trample on this card, and I've never read the rest of the card. This card is actually really good, and it has legs, and I would definitely rank it higher than Mechanized Production. With as many important, impactful artifacts there are in EDH, I feel like this could get there.
So as a card itself, the theft is pretty cool, because if it tramples over and deals combat damage, that gain control of all artifacts is permanent. That ain't until Hellkite Tyrant leaves the battlefield.
Give me your soul rings, your grim monoliths, your mana crypts, your mana vaults. Bring me all of your stuff. And then you pair this with, Mechanized Production, and we're going to talk about whatever it is, Revel and Riches. Is that the card?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but if you control 20 or more artifacts, you can, along the same lines of what we were talking about, make a lot of Thopters, make a lot of treasure tokens. I mean, grab the Goblin Pirate that creates treasure tokens for each artifact your opponents control. I mean, there's definitely been times where I've played that, and it's come in and given me 10 to 15 treasure tokens just off the rip. And so if Hellkite Tyrant, especially if you're giving it haste with Anger or Yavimaya Fires or something like that.
Fervor, yeah.
Right. I mean, there's definite ways to make this a surprise.
I think this really thrives. Yeah, it really thrives in haste, with haste, and I think the card is honestly excellent. I would rank it at like a B+ or an A.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on B. I was gonna say B. I think it's one tick better than Mechanized. You okay with it there?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Maze's End is what's up next, and it's a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. Taps to add 1 mana to your mana pool. Pay 3, tap it, return Maze's End to its owner's hand. Search your library for a gate. Put it on the battlefield, which is huge. Then shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names when you trigger this, you win the game. Jake and I checked. There are 11 gates.
Yes. What was the new gate? What was the name of that?
There was the gate where it's the plaza, where when it enters the battlefield.
Is it Gateway Plaza? It's Gateway Plaza.
It's the one that you tap when it comes into play. You have to pay 1, and it taps for any color.
Yes. Okay, so Maze's End, what I like about this card is it's good by itself.
Right.
The fact that, it wins the game is upside, but this is a land that ramps. It's going to go grab and fix all of your mana, and if your lands don't get destroyed, then you might win the game with it. But I really do like that it puts a land onto the battlefield, you get to play it again next turn, you can keep doing this process until you've fetched all of your gates out. I think the card is really nice for ramp. From winning the game, that aspect, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, because once people see what you're trying to do, all it comes down to is 1 land destruction spell, and then you're not going to be able to finish this. However, there are cards like Crucible of Worlds and Ramanop Excavator that are going to help play them from the graveyard. You just have to hope that your graveyard doesn't get removed
and you can play,
one of your gates are in there.
You can play any of the 4 mana spells that go and get cards, your lands, your non-basic lands, and or gates, Circuitous Route, straight from your library onto the battlefield to kind of help this. You know, I don't even think it should be like your tertiary win con. This is just, you can put it in there if you're running a 4 or 5 color deck. I think that you would actually have to be running a 5 color deck to really make this legitimate, but it could be a fun finisher in a casual 5 color deck. Honestly, most of your land slots in a 5 color deck that's more competitive are probably taken by fetches and things that are coming into play, counting as, you know, Swamp Mountain with your Blood Crypt, and it's you're not
OG
putting
duels
right,
and stuff.
Exactly. You're not really probably putting all 11 gates in there, but you could if you just want to make it more of a casual, you know, 5 color deck. Where would this one land for you? I'm thinking around a C.
Yeah, I would say like probably like a C plus or a B. I think Maze's End is a really, really good card. Is if you're running like Progenitus or Child of Alara.
Yeah.
Like, I just see it as, if it's not like a CEDH deck, and I can't really think of a CEDH Child of Alara deck, but if you're just trying to run like some 5 color, like fix my mana, a nice budget card that's really strong, I actually think it's really good in a casual format.
Yeah, we'll roll on B just because the card itself is good. The you win the game aspect of it is a nice little tack.
It's a little out of reach. Yeah.
Darksteel Reactor is a 4-cost artifact that says indestructible. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, and when it has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. Look at this, Jake. This doesn't check at a time. This, as soon as you have 20 or more counters on it, you win. Just like that.
Yeah, so pairs very well with Proliferate, and there are some good Proliferate effects.
I mean, Atraxa is one of the top EDH commanders, and this is absolutely a card that I would run in there.
Yeah, it just seems like a nice thing to have hovering and looming, and it requires some sort of artifact exile spell in order to get it out of the game.
Right.
It's pretty sticky. I like that. You know that I like sticky cards.
Right.
I love the art.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to say that I would probably get this to be altered with like the Death Star or something. It feels like the Death Star charging up, and you know, it's very difficult to explode unless you get in there and exile it by blowing it up from the inside. Hello. So where do you think Darksteel Reactor falls as far as a charge up win con?
The fact that you can proliferate it, and the fact that it's going to passively just generate counters, you don't have to do anything other than let it just sit there. I would put it at, I think it's going to be so hard to rank it higher than a B. I would like to rank it higher. I would probably rank it at like a C, though. It just takes so many counters. Okay. But you know what? I'll defer to your judgment. If you like it at B, I'm fine having it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that grows counters, and you may be underestimating the ability of Proliferate on that, especially in a deck that's focused on it. But, you know, we'll see. Happily Ever After is up next.
Yes, 1 white, 2 other. Enchantment. When Happily Ever After enters the battlefield, each player gains 5 life and draws a card at the beginning of your upkeep. If there are 5 colors among permanents you control, there are 6 or more card types among permanents you control and or cards in your graveyard, and your life total is greater than or equal to your starting life total, you win the game.
So, this is a lot to unpack, but the bottom line is, to trigger the first one, we got to be playing a 5-color deck or a card that says this is all colors. I think there are 2 good playable cards, if I remember correctly, that say this card is all colors. Then you got to have a little bit of the game have passed to trigger the second part.
Yep. And so just like Tarmogoyf grows by the number of permanents in the yard, you want to be running all sorts of permanents. You want to have a good distribution of them because you want to make sure that one of each is either present on the battlefield or in the yard.
Right, and instants and sorceries will count from your graveyard. Right. But because, I mean, unless you're playing all-in Happily Ever After deck and you've played something that, like, mills half your library into your graveyard and you're ready to go, and, you know, the 5 life is enough to get your life total above your starting life total, I don't know. This one falls in, like, DE range for me, but because it's simply so hard to trigger, and it gives everybody a card and 5 life for 3 mana. So why would you have it take up a slot in your deck? I think very rarely would I even consider running this deck. And maybe if I was building like a King Kenrith themed Eldraine deck, you know?
I do like that the conditions of this card exist in like a fairy tale setting, because it's like you really do have to have the stars align in order for this to work.
Yeah.
I would rank it. I wouldn't rank it as unplayable, but I would rank it at like an E or a D.
Yeah, so for us, if you haven't ever seen any of our tier list videos, F is unplayable, never going to be played. E is very fringe, niche playability. C is like the bottom line of playable for us, and D is somewhere in between that if it's very focused, on whatever that goal is with that card, and then you go up from there. So yeah, I would agree that E. It's not unplayable, but it's very difficult to ever pull off. Helix Pinnacle.
I mean, we can talk about it, or we can just rank it at an S and move on.
Well, it's a very good card. Any deck that's making infinite mana as part of the win con. So it's got fringe CEDH playability. It's got top tier casual EDH playability. It does have to be in a very specific kind of deck, but if you're...
I mean, for 1 green, though, you're getting in on your combo. So, I mean, it's like, as long as you have that infinite mana set up, you just get in for the Helix Pinnacle. Say we just had a brand new card get spoiled, Fierce Guardianship, which, if you have your commander on the battlefield, is going to be a free counter spell. So you could be ready to go infinite. You play Helix Pinnacle. You have counter spell, whether it's Fierce Guardianship or Force of Will, whatever in hand, ready to protect your combo. Create your infinite mana just when at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more. It does check for upkeep, which is good. But if you do have some way to like flash this in and then go infinite, I just think for the price of the card, as far as the casting cost, it's just, it goes online very quickly.
So yeah, I am comfortable with it ranking in an S. I do want to clarify, I don't know if we said this, we are ranking these in a vacuum. We know that S is not across the board. This isn't Force of Will here, but in the vacuum of you win the game cards, that is as close to a wonderful playable card as you can possibly get.
That's
playably. Well, possibly playable. It's hard to say all the words. Barren Glory is an enchantment for 6 mana that says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no permanents other than Barren Glory, so no lands, no other creatures, enchantments, artifacts, nothing, and have no cards in your hand, you win the game.
Well, you know how I feel about this card. I think it's just awful. It's just too difficult to get all of that right. Like, you have to be playing a lot of...
Right. This will be the one that everybody's got an anecdote about, and oh my god, no, I got Barren Glory to work. It's unplayable garbage. It belongs in F. Let me know in the comments below how much you love Barren Glory.
I love that art. I think the art is just fantastic on the card.
It's cute that it exists, as a thing, but I can't see... Okay, so, yeah, it's just unplayable. Biovisionary, however... 1 green, 1 blue, 1 other for a 2/3 at the beginning of the end step, which is the first one that we've talked about that checks for your end step. If you control 4 or more creatures named Biovisionary, you win the game. So, obviously you can't run multiple Biovisionaries in EDH. However, there's a lot of different kinds of clones.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of clones, and one card that comes to mind for me is Cackling Counterpart from Innistrad. Create a token that's a copy of a creature you control, and it also has flashback. So, Rite of Replication is another card that we talked about all the way back from Zendikar.
Yep.
I think that this card actually has legs. The chance that it gets removed are pretty high. Yeah. However, if you are running a bunch of clones, if that's the kind of deck that you're running and it happens to be in your colors, I think it would behoove you to just go ahead and include this card as a potential way of comboing off and winning the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Rite of Replication.
And it's end step.
Did you mention Rite of Replication?
I didn't hear from Zendikar.
Yeah.
And I do like that it's end step. So if this makes it through a turn and you Rite of Replicate, pass your turn and you make it through that end step with this still there, I mean, you're winning the game.
When it is at the beginning of the end step, so you don't even...
The end step.
Doesn't even have to be yours. It can be anybody's end step, I believe. So, you could play it onto the battlefield, have your instant speed stuff ready to go, and then dump it out there. Do you think B? Do you think A?
I don't think B or A, to be honest. I think it's like a C. I think it's a solid C,
just because it's so fragile?
Just because it's a creature and it's so fragile,
yeah.
Even though blue can protect it well,
sure.
Yeah.
Laboratory Maniac, you know it, you love it. 3 costs for a 2/2. If you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead.
So yeah, definitely an A.5 S going on right here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this one's an S just because it is a very tried and true EDH win con. You don't even, I mean, it's play it onto the battlefield with no cards in your library, draw a card, have something to protect it, have your Pact of Negation in hand, and you win straight up.
It's a combo card, and
right.
It has been tested. Even though it's fragile, it is still very, very good. There's a lot of ways that you can draw your entire library and abuse this card, and people have figured it out.
Lab Maniac is definitely, for me...
Like, Ad Nauseam is spiked because so many people play that kind of variant in EDH these days.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to see a card like Lab Maniac be ranked so high, because as a creature, you do think, well, it is pretty fragile. However, it is just excellent. It's just such a
built
card.
into the right combo. And it's not difficult to build it into that combo. We've got a cycle here. I don't think we hit them all in a row, but we've got a cycle of judgment cards that all deal with, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have a feature fulfilled, if you have a trigger fulfilled. And the first one is Test of Endurance, Jake.
Yeah, I actually really like this card. 2 white, 2 other. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 50 or more life, you win the game. It's very straightforward. It's cut and dry. It's a 4-cost card. If you got 50 or more life, you win the game. If you know how EDH works, you start with 40 life. So if you have a really good way of just maintaining that life gain and playing this card, you can win the game. However, once people see that you've resolved the card, they're going to be gunning for you, and everybody's going to have a target on your head because they know that this one card is going to do it for you. And the conditions are actually, they're pretty low conditions. You have one thing you have to do. It's kind of difficult to keep that high life total, but... I
mean, not in EDH, it's, what does it say? Gain 10 life from your starting life total? And then
I would play it in something like black-white, so that I can like tutor up important spells, play stuff like Sorin's Vengeance, Exsanguinate, all those important drain cards, Siphon Life.
I think it could work well in Esper or Blue-White as well, because if you can flash this in at your opponent's EOT, it checks on your upkeep. Whoops, I've gained 10 life this game, which isn't that much life gain. Whoops, I win. Do we go to game 2,
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I know what I would rank it at. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking a B. Maybe an A.
Same. I'm thinking a B. I don't think it's good enough to be an A, because I think there is a certain amount of just aggro that a card like this draws.
Yeah, absolutely. One, you're going to have to deal with that with a lot of these win the game ones. Really, the only good ones are going to be the ones that fit into low cost combos so that you can bop. I mean, I feel like I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million times more. If any of them check at the beginning of your upkeep, I'm always going to be like, well, if you flash it in, and that's kind of my solution. So it's like I make it into a combo deck in and of itself. Epic Struggle is next.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us about this one?
Green, 2 other at the beginning of your upkeep. If you control 20 or more creatures, you win the game. So this is similar. It also came from Judgment. In my opinion, it's a little bit more difficult to pull off, simply because there's so much more creature removal than, like, if it's not on their attack step and they don't have some direct damage, trying to get, the white one triggered is not, or off, the opponent off it is not as easy. But killing some creatures, get them back to 19 creatures at the very least, not that difficult. But, in a token deck, this one would be ridiculous, because it does check, and I like this part, for creatures only, not non-token creatures.
You know who comes to mind, and I was just thinking about this as I'm looking at the card. A new general that's about to make its debut in Commander 2020, Xerus.
Yeah. I feel like you say Xerus for every card we talk about anymore.
But I'm just... I mean, as far as the conditions go, I can't think of a better card to just pay off from all of those passive. You play this card, dude,
right?
And one wheel.
Yeah.
So just like EOT, Leyline of Anticipation on the battlefield, EOT Epic Struggle, EOT Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even think you need Leyline. There's instant speed wheels that you could play. Get this onto the battlefield and EOT it right before you come around. It's like, all right, anybody got instant speed board wipe, or am I at a level of creature numbers that's reachable from the direct kill spells, the targeted removal that you've got in your hand? If not, do I win?
Yeah, this seems very obvious. Now here's the thing about Xerus is it's a card that a lot of people aren't super hyped on for CEDH. It's just a little top heavy, and a lot of people don't like that the wheels that it uses, there's no black. So however, I do think that this card is very good and appropriately converted mana cost.
Yeah, me too. And I think we could sit and come up. I think it's a B. What do you think? Were you trying to make a case for it being an A?
Dude.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a B.
Yeah,
I want to give out an A, but we have to see an A first.
Yeah, well, we're not going to hit it with Battle of Wits, Jake. Blue 3 for at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 200 or more cards in your library, you win the game. So you got to be above 200 with your EDH deck. You got to be you got to have a lot of tutors in there so that you can draw one in the top, 20 cards, hopefully, so that you can go and get your Battle of Wits and then cast it, resolve it around to your upkeep. This is one where I would be like, hopefully you've got like Leyline of Anticipation or something, but...
I mean, dude, this card is just awful. I would never, ever in a million years play this in EDH.
No.
Your deck needs to be like 240 cards, because you have to think you're probably going to have to dig for it a little bit, and you want to be able to check. So unless you're running, unless you can find Elixir of Immortality, fill your library back up, some sort of effect like that, it just seems awful.
Yeah.
I would rank it at an F. I find it to be completely unplayable.
So I want to make an argument for E, just because I know that it is kind of, fun combo-y card. Haha, this is my Battle of Wits deck. Isn't it so hard to shuffle? Because it's 250 cards big. I do think the decks exist. I don't think that there are many. Make sure everything possible is completely dead, and then you win decks. So I don't... Can we call it an F+?
If you want to give out a F+, I'm all about it.
Tell us about Liliana's contract.
So 2 black, 3 other, Liliana's contract enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. So you're drawing 4 right off the ETB.
Yeah.
At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. So there are a lot of demons. Joel checked on those. They're
hundreds.
I mean, yeah, a bunch of demons.
There are at least like 20-something that are mythics. Yeah, so very playable.
Yeah. Very playable. I think the card is fun. For 5 mana, draw 4 in black. I feel like it's mostly like a mono black kind of thing going on here.
Yeah, I mean, there's always better draw spells in blue, but in black, I mean, a lot of the spells look like this. Knight's Whisper is draw cards, lose that much life for like 2 mana. The return on this one is probably 1 card and 1 life less than I would want it to be like an epic draw spell, a really good draw spell for a black deck that doesn't have access to blue or some of the other draw spells. So to me, this seems like a draw spell that sticks, so that you have that like residual passive thing. It's like Maze's End to me. It's a good card. It's just
like you could get there.
It's a good
You can get to it.
Right.
It can happen.
Yeah. People are going to be
likely
watching.
Going to happen?
No.
But it's just a really good draw spell with some huge upside if you can pull it off.
Right. Yeah. So for me, this one is around the same level as Mechanized Production and Biovisionary, because it's possible, but it's not, you're going to have to work to get there probably.
Right. No, I think that's fair.
Approach of the Second Sun is up next, and this is a win con that was actually played pretty heavily when it was in Standard as a control finisher to win the game. If it was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. So you need this to resolve the very first time so that it goes into your so it goes back into your library, or you've got to figure out a way to get it from your library into your hand. You can't give this flashback. Just to note, since we are talking EDH, it does have to be cast from your hand to check that first thing if you've cast another spell name Approach of the Sun, because it does need to be cast from your hand.
Yeah, that's a good note. I think that the fact that if you're running a control deck or any kind of variant like that, you can just passively run this in the deck. If you're running white, Approach of the Second Sun can be a backup win condition. I like that this, unlike a lot of the other cards, it doesn't check for a lot of things. It checks for, has it been cast twice? So...
Right. Yeah, you're right.
That makes it very playable.
You don't need other pieces to make this work. This is one slot in your deck.
You compare it to Happily Ever After, which is just like, do you have a million things
or even
that are working
even
out?
Biovisionary. I mean, you need multiple clones and that creature to stick. Whereas with Approach, it's just like, cast it. Anybody got a counterspell? Okay, shuffle it back into my library. Hope that y'all have a counterspell by the time it comes back around, because you got to cast it the second time. The second time for the win con, it does have to resolve. The first time it could be countered. Go into your graveyard and you figure out some way to get it back into your hand so you can cast it from your hand, or back into your library so you can cast it when you draw it again. But that second time, you do have to, I guess, protect the resolution of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do like that it only takes one slot on your 99. You're right about that.
Yeah, I love that about it. And honestly, just because of the inevitability of it, I might go A for Approach on this one.
Yeah, I think I do like that, and I think we're going to get some arguments on that. But I do like A for Approach because it's one slot of your 99. You can just put it in there. If you've got
in the
Approach
control
of the
deck,
Sun,
dude.
right.
Esper, blue-white control.
Well, and honestly, really, any deck that runs white that's got an extra slot and just wants like a weird passive win con that can come up and be like, well, this will end the game if it resolves the second time.
You know, some EDH games go so long that everybody's waiting for Approach of the Second Sun to happen.
That's not a bad point. Bellador Sovereign is up next. It's a 6-cost 4/6 cat beast with Vigi lifelink. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if this cat is on the field and it checks and you have 40 or more life, and then when it goes to resolve, you also have 40 life, you win the game.
So for me, I like this card. I think it's very good, but again, it's a creature and it doesn't have indestructible. Right. It doesn't have hexproof or shroud, so you gotta protect it.
I do like that the threshold
is where it falls short for me.
The threshold is so low on this, though. Have 40 or more life in a deck with white. If you're running this, you obviously are focusing on life gain anyway. Hopefully you're focusing on, if you're running this, you've got some creature hexproof thing going as well.
And it does have lifelink built in, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because it's a creature, I can't put it above B, but I do like the low threshold to win. It's just like, if you can mitigate, if you could stay at where you're at,
and honestly,
you can win the game.
I mean, so far with the S's, we've said, okay, this is strong in a very cheap, easily protected combo. So far for A, the threshold was like, okay, this literally requires nothing else but playing this card, and maybe you'll get there. It's a win the game card that doesn't need help, so it doesn't take any more of your 99. All of these need help, have a place in the 99, but also need some pieces to work, but probably some pieces that are also synergistic to the deck. You're not going to have to get crazy with it, and down from there. So I think that B is completely justifiable.
Yeah, let's talk about Revel and Riches. 1 black, 4 other enchantment. This was a card we were talking about earlier. I think it pairs well with Hellkite Tyrant and Mechanized Production.
Yep.
Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with sack this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. At the beginning of your upkeep, this is what we care about. If you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. I like this in just like an Athreos board wipe build as well. Just any kind of profit from
Right.
the demise of your opponent's creatures. You just run all of the wrath effects that you possibly can. I think it's an excellent card. The conditions are very few. Again, these treasures are actually really nice as well, because if you do need to sack them in a pinch to generate extra mana, that's upside as well. This is one of the higher cards easily for me. I would rank it at probably an A as well. Well, it's cheaper than Approach.
I mean, as far as our justifications for S's, A's, and B's and how those fall out, this card does the same thing as Approach of the Second Sun. It doesn't need anything else, but it could be supported. It in and of itself could get there. Treasures, they're not that hard to find, especially with.
We all know that Smothering Tithe is
right.
Oh my god, Smothering Tithe is such an oppressive card in EDH.
Exactly.
There's other ways to create treasures, but I do think that just passively generating the treasure off of creatures dying
right
seems very, very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that A I'm very comfortable with. Are you comfortable with A?
I'm comfortable with A for
Revel in Riches.
That's
because
right.
You create a treasure token every time a creature of your opponent's dies. Got him. Chance Encounter.
We're beginning to get there.
Chance Encounter has one general, essentially, that it plays in. Red 2 other for an enchantment. Whenever you win a coin flip, put a luck counter on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it has 10 or more luck counters on it, you win the game. So, Zender Split is who I was talking about. That one is the one that lets you flip all the freaking
That's really the
coins.
only home for it ever.
Yeah, but it is really good in that deck, in my opinion, because that deck, it flips a lot of freaking coins. And so for me, I don't think we have to spend too much time on this one. I think it falls nicely into D because, again, in like a...
I was going to say C or D.
Yeah.
It fulfills a niche, which is important.
Right.
So that immediately gets it away from E and F territory right out the gate.
Right.
However, it is very specific what it slots into. For that reason, I'm out.
Yep, 100%. You want to know another one I'm out on? Hedron Alignment. Jake, I'm going to read this one real fast. 3-mana enchantment, hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may reveal your hand. If you do, you win the game if you own a card named Hedron Alignment in exile, hand, graveyard, battlefield, scry 1, doesn't matter. Hedron Alignment in EDH. We're sorry, buddy. It just isn't going to work out.
Impossible.
It's just not something that you ever want to see. This one is actually going to live on F-. I think it would be 100%. It would be easier to pull off literally destroying everything except one enchantment on your board than possibly pulling off Hedron Alignment. Jake.
Yeah, that's true.
Talk to us about Celestial Convergence.
All right, Celestial Convergence, 2 white, 2 other enchantment. Celestial Convergence comes into play with 7 omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove an omen counter from Celestial Convergence. If there are no omen counters on Celestial Convergence, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest life total, the game is a draw. Straight up, not banned. This card is... I love the art on it. I think it's very conditional, but if you built it into the right shell, it's one of these win the game cards again that I think are doable.
Yeah,
I don't think it's out of reach.
I mean, it's not out of reach. It does fulfill a niche. You do have to go literally 7 turns around the board once this card hits the battlefield. You got to go 8, right? Kinda? Yeah, you do, because it's got 7, so on the turn, you got to go 7 more untaps, I guess, and removing the counter off of it. You got to keep your life total the highest, which, I mean, in the deck with this in it, probably shouldn't be that difficult. But this isn't a card you want to...
It puts the game in an interesting situation, which is cool.
Sure, but you don't want to pull this card on, like, turn 12 to 15 or later, because it's just a dead card.
Yeah, it is your upkeep.
Right. It's got to go all really the way back around. I think... What do you think? You say what you think.
Well, I think that you offer some good insight, and so I would rank it after listening to what you have to say. I would rank it at like a C or a D.
Okay.
I think that the card is fine. I like that it's easy. When we're looking at win the game, we're looking at all of these cards that are just some of them are just awful. I think it's definitely above those.
I think it's above these because it is possible. I mean, if you played this on turn 4 in a life gain deck, like you went and searched up the enchantment, with turns 1 through 3, drop it on turn 4, and go into gain life like crazy mode, you're probably going to have some other life gain payoffs in the first place, and you could possibly get there with it, you know?
Sure.
Tell us about
Let's talk about this card
Ascendancy.
that's really good.
Yeah.
1 green, 1 blue, enchantment. For blue, a green, and 1 other, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So a really nice mana sink right out the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy at the beginning of your upkeep. If Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. So this is blue-green. It's a combo magnet, man. It's just like Helix Pinnacle.
Right.
I think that achieving this is very, very doable, and it's a card that's good by itself.
Yeah, it is good by itself. It'll populate itself with its own counters. You can sink mana into it. In these colors and with so many deck strategies, there are lots of ways to dump a ton of 1/1 counters on the stuff. I mean, I look at this and I go...
And the proliferate ability around this is just like
exactly.
evolution.
You put this onto the field, you cast 1 Hydra for even X = 6, and you're 6 points to your 20 or more growth counters on it. Somebody's going to have to remove this. That's pretty much it. It's going to have to be removed or you're going to win the game in probably just a few turns if this is in the right kind of deck, which I don't see why you wouldn't be playing it in the right kind of deck. This one to me is an A. I don't think it's quite an S just because it doesn't have that like hyper combo immediate you win go infinite kind of thing. You do have to have a creature on the battlefield and to trigger the infinite possibility of it, really. But once you, it's got a lot of potential, man.
A seems good.
Yeah, I talked it down from a S there, and then I kind of wanted to put it there, but then I was like, nah, never mind. I think we should go with A, because we've got near-death experience coming up, and this one's going to be a hootenanny.
Yeah, let's not spend too much time here. This is too conditional. It's restrictive to white with the 3 white. It's just never going to happen. It's a waste in the 99.
Yeah.
If you got a case for it being anything, it's not absolutely F. Right. I would put it at a strong E.
We know that there are cards that exist. If your life total would be reduced to 1, reduce it to 1 instead. But you got to have that and this and it. Yeah, it's too difficult to pull off for what it is and what colors it is and that kind of thing. You know, it's not as good as Azure's Elocutors, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but Azure's Elocutors isn't really as good as most of the cards we've talked about.
Nope.
However, it does say win the game. We've talked about this card in Pioneer Sleeper Series. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a filibuster counter on Azure's Elocutors. Then, if it has 5 or more filibuster counters on it, you win the game. Whenever a source deals damage to you, remove a filibuster counter. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you're putting 1 on. Proliferate effects are going to help you get there faster. However, any source that hits you is going to set you back.
Yeah.
So I think that the card is appropriately named based on how maddening it's going to be to pull this off. Again, it's a creature. It doesn't have any kind of hexproof attached to it.
Nope.
So it dies to everything. It's a 3/5 for 5. I think in EDH there's a lot of better things that you could be doing for 5 mana.
Right. I know people don't like it dies to removal. We should say it's fragile as a win con. How about that? That's a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it's like so fragile it's like the wings of a moth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think D, in a hard control possibility, would you even rank it down at E? I think it's a little easier to pull off than like Happily Ever After or Near Death.
Sure, I would rank it at a D.
Yeah.
When you look at those cards, I have to rank it higher than those cards.
Right, yeah, but I don't think it's as high as these up here. I think these actually have more playability, which is funny now that we've got Biovisionary up there. That's going to ruffle some feathers. Thassa's Oracle is up next. It's 2 blue for a 1/3. This card is very new and very hyped. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X of your library, where X is your devotion. Put up to 1 of them on the bottom of your library. Doesn't matter. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win. It's the same thing as Lab Maniac. This is a secondary win con in lots of different
It's an S.
EDH decks. It's really good.
And it's hard for me. I hate ranking a creature at an S, but it is because I know that people have pulled it off, and it's a tried and true way of winning the game.
Quick combo that's easy to protect because it's not that expensive and it's in the right colors.
And that 3 toughness is important as well. I mean, I guess not so much. When you're casting spells like Ad Nauseam and Demonic Consultation, you're just like, it's
and you just need it. You just need it to resolve. That's it. It doesn't have to stay. All it needs to do is resolve. Mortal Kombat is up next, and here's an enchantment from Torment.
I really like this in Dredge. 2 black, 2 other. At the beginning of your upkeep, if 20 or more creature cards are in your graveyard, you win the game. So anybody who's trying to throw a utility box of creatures, just like anything and everything, birthing pod kind of deck, Golgari, Grave Troll, Stinkweed Imp.
This card is good as in Marin. I did a 3-way series on Marin. This card would have been a fun passive win con that you could possibly hit.
Right. I mean, does it fold to Graveyard Exile?
Sure. But that whole deck folds to it, man. I mean, if you're going in on that deck as a strategy, you've probably got Witchbane Orb and the like to help protect you against those kind of removals. And so with this one, this is one of the few where I'm like, I don't really see a ton of argument there because your entire deck's strategy probably folds to Tormod's Crypt and Bojuka Bog.
That's right.
And so hopefully you've got some protection built in against that so that Mortal Kombat actually could get pulled off. I think it's more likely than 50 or more life at your upkeep or 20 or more creatures at your upkeep.
Yeah, and this is obviously going to go in an EDH deck that has like 40 or more creatures in it, you know, like 30, 35 plus creatures. But when you get deep in the game, just having a card that if it resolves and you can get the conditions, again, where a lot of these cards have conditions, and when it comes down to one condition for me, it really just seems achievable. So I would put this at like a B.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an A.
No.
I don't think it's as easy as those.
No.
But I think I like it a little bit more than Felidar Sovereign, and I like it a little bit more than Darksteel Reactor. So maybe like a B plus.
B plus could roll for me. I could see that. We've got one remainder, and that is old Jace Wielder. Blue, 1 for our War of the Spark passive planeswalker that says if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, Laboratory Maniac, son! So,
that's right.
I mean, it's the exact same thing. It's a little bit harder because it is 4 mana. You can't just drop it for 2 or drop it for 3 like Thassa's or Lab. I think that, this is no one's main strategy, but this only gets played in CDH because it is redundancy on that Lab Maniac thing that you can do to just win the game out of nowhere if you've got the protection for it.
Because of that, and because of the casting cost, I would throttle it back a bit, and I would put it at an A.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it at S tier like Lab Maniac and Oracle.
No.
But I do think that the card... blue is a pesky color. You see a lot of blue at the top there, and the only other blue in this list is Mechanized Production and Battle of Wits and Hedron Alignment, which are at the bottom because they're absolutely unplayable. But other than that, most of the blue win the game cards have kind of won the tier list now that it's all shaken out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to leave Jace at that A+, just because it does have that CEDH playability, and that is how this tier list shakes out.
Well, we hope you have enjoyed this tier list. We love doing these tier lists. This was a user-suggested tier list, and if you want to suggest a tier list, drop it in the comments. If it's something interesting, if it's a meme, maybe we'll cover it.
If you like this video, if you want to see more like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, the YouTube stuff. If you want to support us further, we've got a Patreon where we're doing monthly giveaways, and we've got exclusive content dropping all the time. Go check it out. Link is in the description below and see if it's a good fit for you. We also stream on Twitch. Go find us over there. Jake, I'm tapped out.
I'm tapped out, and until the next time, I'll see you later, Warehouse.
On the flippity.